Hello, I'm Ndimyake. Mwakalyelye. Vincent Makori is off today. This is Africa 54. And we begin in Egypt, where violence has struck in the North Sinai Peninsula. Suspected militants are being blamed for the ambush attack and deaths of some 24 security officers. Meanwhile, a tense calm hovers over Cairo on Monday as Egypt's military-backed government says it will not tolerate anti-government demonstrations. But anger over the deaths of at least 36 protesters in custody threatened to spill over into renewed confrontation. VOA's Elizabeth Arrott reports for us from Cairo.
Egypt's Muslim Brotherhood has expressed outrage over the deaths of dozens of supporters held in police custody. The opposition accuses security forces of killing the men in cold blood. The Interior Ministry acknowledges the deaths, but lays the blame on the prisoners. In one version of several conflicting official accounts, the men were trying to escape. News of the deaths followed a vow by Armed Forces Chief Abdel Fattah al-Sisi to continue to crack down on what he termed terrorism and the destruction of the country. It was his first public comment since security raids on anti-government protest camps killed hundreds of people Wednesday. But al-Sisi also promised inclusion for Brotherhood supporters, saying there's room for everyone in the political process. Cairo moves somewhat closer to normal Sunday, but security forces and tanks remain stationed in most districts, and some flashpoint areas are blocked off completely. The cordons and the presence of angry anti-Brotherhood civilians prompted the Islamists and the umbrella group, the Anti-Coup Alliance, to scale back protests Sunday. The government has promised to rein in popular committees, everything from neighborhood watch groups to roving bands of vigilantes. But their actions keep the capital on edge, with gunfire heard throughout the night. The violent crackdown on the protesters has prompted some European and American officials to consider reviewing aid to Egypt. But Saudi Arabia, the Egyptian military's main regional backer, Sunday warned against such action. And Egyptian authorities attempted to preempt any hostile foreign moves, saying they would be looking at aid to see what wasn't needed anyway.
Well, joining us now via Skype from Cairo is VOA's Elizabeth Arrott. Thank you so much for joining us again this evening. Elizabeth, bring us up to date on what is happening in Cairo as we speak.
Well, it's just about half an hour till curfew, and opponents of the military-backed government are planning another round of curfew-defying protests this evening. Now, those seem to be dying down in the last 2 days. That's not the major source of confrontation. But as you noted, there are these other incidents that's really sent a new shockwave through Egypt today.
Mm-hmm. Before we talk about those, what is the reported number of those killed? I'm just watching this footage showing the soldiers literally using live bullets and firing at people. How many dead so far now?
We get conflicting reports of how many people have been killed. Roughly now since Wednesday, it does seem to be a minimum of about 900 people have died, mainly in Cairo, but we're across the country where there are these protests and confrontations.
Mm-hmm. Now, to what you alluded to earlier about some of the reports about police being killed, about those in custody being killed, what clarification can you give us on this?
Again, this is a new type of violence for this particular phase of Egypt's turmoil. The attack in Sinai was particularly shocking and probably, I believe, one of the worst that's happened, certainly in recent memory. 25 policemen killed in a convoy appeared by rocket-propelled grenades by suspected militants right near the border with Gaza. We've seen this uptick in violence in Sinai in the month and a half since President Morsi has been ousted, but really for the past 3 years since the revolution. Under Mr. Morsi, there was a certain détente. He had certain sway as with Hamas based in Gaza as an offshoot of the Muslim Brotherhood. But so there has been increased anger among militants in Gaza, as well as militants and Islamist jihadis in Sinai itself.
Now, before you go, Elizabeth, these reports that the former president, Hosni Mubarak, might be released. What can you tell us about that?
It's kind of an unusual move at this point. There is technically, this could have been expected. It was a corruption charge. They may not have enough evidence for him. But he could have been released a couple months ago. They kept him in on a technicality for various retrials. Just at this particular moment, especially, when the military claims to be working for the will of the people was to put Mr. Mubarak behind bars. Mm-hmm. So it's very strange to see them moving to try and get him released at this point, very volatile point.
Well, Elizabeth Arrott, thank you so much for the updates, and please, for us, stay safe out there in Cairo. That's Elizabeth Arrott reporting for us via Skype from Cairo.